No athlete in his or her right mind is going to eat less and exercise more. They just don't do that. This is where our culture gets things wrong. What they do is they eat more and they exercise more, and they eat more to fuel the exercise. And that eating more and exercising more is what drives that beautiful athletic physique. When you eat less and exercise more, it's like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. It will work for a little while, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, but invariably you will hit a plateau. Invariably you will have hunger, energy, and craving issues, and no athlete does that.
Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. All right, you guys, welcome back. I am so excited for this episode. This is an amazing episode to listen to. This is an episode with Dr. Jade Teta, who's a naturopathic doctor, author, educator, entrepreneur, bringing a unique perspective to health and personal development, combining over 30 years of experience in personal training with 20 years in functional medicine. Yeah, for functional medicine. Specializing in mindset, muscle, and metabolism, and he focuses on tailored approaches to health, fitness, and weight loss. We talk a lot about being a metabolic detective. He's got some great analogies for things. One of the things that we talk about, and I can't wait for you to hear this in the episode, we talk about habits and behaviors. And habits and behaviors don't drive change. It's a deeper thing, your identities and belief. What does that mean? You got to listen to the episode. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Female Health Solution podcast. Today we have Dr. Jade Teta. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Beth. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Yes. I think we're going to dive into a lot of fun stuff. But one of the things that I saw in your background in history is that you've been in personal training for a very long time.
Yeah. Actually, since the age of 15, believe it or not. And the reason I say 15 is because that's the first time I got paid to to write programs for people. And, so I used to take the guys on my football team in high school and write programs for them. And then I started writing programs for their family. This would be all the way back in 88, so it's a while ago. But yeah, personal training. And I did that all through high school, all through undergrad, and all through medical school as well. That's how I paid the bills. And then when I got out of medical school, I actually kept doing it. I had a clinic and I had a training center, and it was just always been a part of my work.
Yeah. That's a really unique perspective to have. There's not a lot of people that would do that type of health and training at the same time. What kind of things did you see or come across, or results did you get that were really different from having that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting, right? That you'll know this, but perhaps your listeners may not. When I was on my way to traditional medical school, I'm a naturopathic doctor, so I'm licensed in California and Washington State. For those who don't know that term, it's basically your lifestyle medicine doctor. So we basically are trained in lifestyle medicine. And I went to that university because when I was getting ready to go to East Carolina Medical School, traditional medical school, I don't know what it was, Beth, but I looked at the curriculum at the time and I was like, wait a second, there's no nutrition, there's no exercise, there's no psychology training in this at all. And I knew I wanted to go into lifestyle medicine because I was already doing it and it was already really powerful. And so that kind of sent me early on in my career. This was early 20s, right? That I was like, what am I going to do now? And I found a little known program at the time. Now, who knew that functional medicine and alternative medicine was going to become mainstream? But at that time, it was kind of considered like witchcraft medicine to go in this direction. And so I did. And to answer your question, one of the things that I found pretty much right away is that working with people in the gym, because you have just direct contact and you're seeing people constantly, and you're talking to them all the time, and you have direct access to their thought processes, to what they're eating, and obviously you're working with them. And so for me, I just always got very good results with individuals because I was always with them, always talking, always engaged. And one of the things that I think is most critical about medicine and transformation is the stories that we tell about things. So these, unconscious stories that we have regarding who we are and how we approach the world. And so one of the things I learned was that the way people thought about fitness and whether they saw themselves as an athlete or not, or how they viewed food as something to combat stress or something that was pleasurable or something that was just to fuel the body, and how their mindset worked around all of that was, I think, informed me right from the beginning of my career in health and fitness that these things matter. And perhaps what matters most is the way people think about themselves and the world. Otherwise, it's kind of like that, why are you doing this in the first place? And I do think that gave me an interesting leg up when I was in clinic and medical school. And then when I got out, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to keep doing training, because what I saw was that from my perspective, which of course we all have our opinions, but from my perspective, I saw pretty clearly that just being in the clinic, seeing someone once a week, once a month, once in a while was just not doing, the trick for most people. But working with them every single week in the gym was a powerful way to affect change. And so from my perspective, I think what it did for me is really allow me to have a lot of contact hours in why people are successful, and also be able to see and work with people every single week and watch the journey to success. And I think that informed, me pretty profoundly throughout my career.
I've been an athlete my whole life. I was like a three-sport athlete in high school, played volleyball in college, and then more recently I played women's full tackle football for the Minnesota Vixen.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah. You and I are both football geeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so much fun. Oh my God, it's so much fun. One of the things that I think is interesting, people have a history, especially women have a history of being an athlete. You can think of yourself that way or even tap into that. But without thinking of yourself that way, it's like you have to tell people, you know what, you still can. You don't have to be the most perfect athletic coordinated person to do a good job, even going to yoga or something like that. Like just get started, go do something. It's, it's like they're afraid to step in the gym. I'm not going to be that good at it. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. You and I were talking before we popped on about the fact that most of your, most of your followers, most of the people you see in clinic are women. Same with me. And one of the things that's interesting, I remember I had a patient once who was telling me, I'm just not good at sports. And I was like, where did you get that idea from? And she actually started to tear up. And she goes, when I was like, I don't know, a young girl, I was out playing. She was from the Midwest, and she was out playing hockey with her brothers, and she was just the youngest and had three older brothers, and she was the youngest. And her father came out and yelled at her and said, "Hockey's not for girls." And in that moment, she was, he yelled at her for like kind of playing. And in that moment, right, she created this narrative in herself that this was not for her. And it's really interesting because I think this is not uncommon for women of a particular generation. Of course, it has changed an awful lot, but especially in the boomers that I work with a lot, this is pretty prevalent. And so they don't see themselves that way. And they oftentimes see things that can make a huge impactful difference in their the way they look, feel, and function. Something like weight training, for example, as something that should be reserved for young college-age men, when in reality, it is one of the most powerful things that a mature woman could be doing to look good, feel good, function better, live longer. And this is what I mean by breaking down some of these unconscious stories that we tell ourselves as humans without even being fully aware, and that these things follow us around and they guide us into how we are going to approach health and fitness in the first place. And so if you listen closely to how you talk and listen to patients, and the way they talk, you'll find these stories everywhere. And I do think it's a pretty prevalent belief system, especially for women of a particular age, for sure. And part of it, by the way, too, I'd be interested in what you think about this. Part of it, by the way, is our culture is really interesting in the way that we approach things, especially when we think about diet and exercise, especially this idea of harder is always better. More is better. Harder is better. Longer is better. And that really, this, and, I know this, but I'm not sure that most of your listeners will know this, or most people out in the world know this, is that ultimately when you're looking at things like conditioning and getting in shape and working with your metabolism, that too much, too frequently, too intensely can be a stress to the physiology, in the same way that sitting on the couch and doing nothing can be a stress to the physiology. Over exercising and under eating can also be a stress to the physiology. And we know it's a stress because if you look at things like hunger, energy, and cravings, which are kind of our ancient survival starvation software, when we're under stress, we oftentimes see hunger go up, cravings go up, energy become unpredictable and unstable. Think about it. A couch potato and a chronic dieter, what do they have in common? They both have hunger, energy, and cravings issues constantly. I call this HEC, by the way. It's the acronym HEC, hunger, energy, cravings. HEC, when your HEC is out of check, your metabolism is under stress. And when your HEC is in check, your metabolism is probably not under stress. Well, a couch potato and a dieter both have HEC out of check. That's how you know it's stressful. And so there is a way that individuals should be thinking about diet and exercise, and that is about the Goldilocks zone. So it really is a lot about balance, especially when we're looking at things like strength and conditioning and for the metabolism, for sure.
The number of women that I see, and this is, again, I feel like it's a normal thing. Oh, I'm going to go to this class at the gym and then do this other class and then go do this thing. And then they don't eat and they don't fuel and they don't feed themselves. And I'm like, how do you think you're repairing any tissue?
Well, and think about it like this, just to drive this discussion home. Like, if you think about what most people want to look like, right? If we showed people a bunch of pictures, men and women, a bunch of pictures of different men and women, they're almost always going to point out the athletes, the athletic bodies on women and the athletic bodies on men. And we can even in our culture just go, athletes are who we would like to look like, function like, right? The interesting thing about that is no athlete in his or her right mind is going to eat less and exercise more. They just don't do that. This is where where our culture gets things wrong. What they do is they eat more and they exercise more, and they eat more to fuel the exercise. And that eating more and exercising more is what drives that beautiful athletic physique. When you eat less and exercise more, it's like having one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. It will work for a little while, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, but invariably you will hit a plateau. Invariably you will have hunger, energy, and craving issues. And no athlete does that. So I do think it's about educating individuals, in this world to essentially say, look, athletes don't do that at all. What they do is they eat more and they exercise more. And that's an important distinction that I think most people don't understand. So I agree with you. This idea of like, I ate some M&Ms, therefore I got to jump and, do, 1,000 more hours, on the treadmill. That really is not what most athletes are going to do. They're going to eat good, healthy foods. They're going to get their calories and their exercise output near equal. And that creates this energy flux that ramps up calorie burning and fat burning in particular, while maintaining muscle mass, which is what we all want.
Do you find, because with your extensive background in personal training, do you find that you come up against other people in that same field and they're like, what you're saying is totally wrong. That's not how this works. That's not what my textbook said.
Yeah, actually 100%. And this to me is another one of this idea behind subconscious beliefs. And right now we're in this really interesting place in culture where it's really about, if you're online, if you're on social media, if you're like, we're all scrolling nowadays with our devices and all that stuff, you'll hear 1,000 different messages about what you're supposed to do workout wise and diet wise. 1 minute it's keto, next minute it's fasting, next minute it's no carbs, next minute it's eat the carbs, next minute it's vegan. Like, we all know what this is like. But from my perspective, when it comes to diet and exercise, there really is only one rule, one rule to rule them all, right? And that is, do what works for you. Everyone is uniquely different. So this idea that we have these one size fits all protocols that are going to work for everyone, in my mind, is problematic. What we really should be teaching people is to be more like metabolic detectives than dieters, meaning what works for you. It doesn't matter what you psychologically are drawn to. Let's see if your metabolism likes it. So yeah, if you want to do intermittent fasting, sure, try it. If you want to try keto, sure. If you want to do vegan, Sure, psychologically, you might be drawn to certain things. However, does your metabolism like that? When you're eating this way and exercising this way, is hunger, energy, and cravings in check? Are you attaining and maintaining optimal body composition? Are your blood labs and vitals moving in optimal directions? If so, then you're doing what is right for you, despite what it looks like. I mean, I'll make a statement here but I don't care if you're eating cotton candy and Snickers bars. If your hunger, energy, and cravings is in check, you are attaining and maintaining optimal body composition, and all your blood labs and vitals are moving in the right direction, then that's the right approach. Now, you and I would say, I doubt there's anyone in the world that is actually going to work for. But the point remains, we should really understand that we are all uniquely different. And instead of studying every new guru, every new diet book, every new podcast and documentary, we really should be learning to study ourselves and our own metabolic reactions. And when we do that, we can find a program that we can love, learn to live with, and do consistently. And so to me, that's what I think is the message that comes through when you get all this infighting. The reason everyone's infighting is because they're going, this worked for me, you should do it. What they're missing, though, is that, yes, that worked for you and good for you for finding that, but it's not going to work for every individual. Every individual needs to find what works for them.
And then there's, I feel like, along with that, the massive amount of information that's out there, but also like old ideas that permeate everything that people still run off of. Oh, my BMI is this, or, oh, this, all of these ideas. So, and you had said it relates to your subconscious beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Subconscious beliefs and all of these things. So how do you see that play out for people when they're looking at, oh my gosh, I tried this and it worked for a little bit, but then it didn't. What next?
Here's the fallacy I think that really we need to unpack. We think very wrongly that it is habits and behaviors that drive change. This is what we've been told over and over again. And to me, this is a very wrong belief, because there is something deeper that habits and behaviors flow out of, that impact habits and behaviors. If you don't have this deeper thing taken care of, there's no changing your habits and behaviors. And that deeper thing is identity and beliefs. So it's not habits and behaviors that transform us. It's our identity and our beliefs, which habits and behaviors flow out of. And what's behind that? Stories, narratives. We humans are meaning-making machines. So let's go back to this, patient of mine who was told, you can't be an athlete, you're a girl, basically. That's the story she wrote. Now, what her dad said is hockey is not for girls, right? And maybe even what he meant is leave your brothers alone. They're playing, they're getting ready for a game. Who knows? But whatever that statement was, she created a story about that and anchored it firmly into her unconscious. Now, I call these misguided unconscious decisions, mud, right? Misguided unconscious decisions. She got stuck in the mud. Now, these are misguided because we make these decisions about the world at times when we do not have the wisdom, we do not have the tools, we do not have the experience or maturity to make sense of what happened. They're unconscious because we're not aware that these things are driving our decisions now in adulthood. So our childhood development, our adolescent development, our young adulthood development, things happen to us. We write these internal unconscious narratives, these misguided unconscious decisions, and then they follow us around in all of our behaviors, in our personal relationships, in our health and fitness pursuits, in the way we manage finances, and all of that kind of stuff. So we get stuck in the mud. We think it's about habits and behaviors. We think it's about willpower and motivation. It's really about questioning the stories that we tell ourselves. But here's what's interesting, Beth. You know this. Most people defend their old identity. They are not interested in dismantling these stories. They defend who it is they think they are, when in reality, we need to learn to become different humans. We need to learn to be more authentic, not to a past self and a current self. Because, self-development talks about authenticity all the time. Be authentic, right? We hear that buzzword all the time. But you don't want to be authentic to your 18-year-old self. You certainly don't want to be authentic to the self right now who's eating all the wrong things, not exercising, not having good quality personal relationships. What we want to be authentic to is our next level human self, our better self, our future self. And to do that, we need to restructure our identities. And that means these underlying stories, these misguided unconscious decisions have to be rewritten. And this is where the real rubber meets the road whenever we're going to talk about the big things that we all want to change. Like if you ask someone what they want to change, it's going to be personal relationships, health and fitness, and finance, right? These are the big three areas that people need the most help with. And these three areas are most impacted by your unconscious, misguided decisions.
Yes. Well, and this is a great opportunity to bring up your newest book, because this is your 9th book.
Yeah.
So your newest book is titled You Grow Me, and you had said it's a philosophy book.
It really is a philosophy book, and just for the listeners, so the title, You Grow Me, right? It's a philosophy book, but couched in the genre of romance and personal relationships. And it comes from the old Jerry Maguire movie. For those of you who have not seen that movie, there's a scene in this movie where Tom Cruise, who played the major antagonist, Jerry Maguire, was with his wife, who was played by Renee Zellweger, and they're just getting back together, trying to get back together after breaking up. And he comes in the house and he goes, "You complete me." And of course she melts and they ride off into the sunset, happily ever after. And the idea behind this is that this is what we think. So another misguided unconscious decision that we write around personal romantic relationships is that we find the person. We go out and find this person, and then they complete us. And the idea is, actually, the way it really works is we create the person who we want to date within ourselves. We become the person that we want to date, and then they grow us and help us get to our better selves. So it would basically be like, okay, so for me, Jade, I essentially go, I want to be, let's say, in a romantic relationship with somebody. I don't go out and find them. I essentially go, who is it that I want to be and become, even if I was single and lived the rest of my life without a romantic partner? Who is it that I want to become? So I create myself. And once I do that, I begin to attract people who recognize that. Let's call it the law of recognition. And an example of this would be like, if I want to buy, let's say I'm trying to get a new car, right? And I decide I'm going to get a red Tesla. Once I make that decision about the red Tesla, the law of recognition kicks in, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden, Teslas start showing up everywhere, and a bunch of them are red as if by magic. Well, this is what happens when we become the person we want to date. All of a sudden, that person starts to recognize us. And then rather than them completing us as if we're jigsaw puzzles, they grow us to complete our better selves. And we do the same for them. And what this does is it changes the narrative a little bit, because relationships, a lot of people don't want to hear this, right? But relationships always end no matter what, right? Very few people, it's in the Notebook. We're not going to hold hands and die together. Relationships will end. The question is, when they end, are you a better, more functional version of yourself? Or are you you're a more degraded, dependent person? So the idea behind this book is a philosophy book about personal growth inside of romantic relationships, because my belief is that romantic relationships are the most consequential and important relationships that we will ever be in, because they have the most potential to help us grow to be better humans.
And on the flip side of that, I was laughing because you're like, all relationships end. I was like, that's the way to bring the sunshine today,
I know, right? It's just like, no one wants to hear that, right? But like, essentially, it is the truth. And I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer,
like,
right?
Everybody's going to die someday, so.
Well, and honestly, here's the interesting thing. This, by the way, Beth, I get it, right? But this to me is such a beautiful concept, though, because here's the thing. As humans, right? Like, obviously, life has 100% fatality rate. And I have this theory that at the end of our lives, we're not going to care how much money we have in our bank account or whether we have a six-pack or any of that. We're going to mostly look back and want to think, did I matter and make a difference? Am I proud of the human I was? And to me, this is the most important thing in the world. This is why purpose, to me, is the quintessential thing that all humans are looking for. Now, of course, if you don't have purpose, or if you miss purpose, you're going to look for the lesser substitutes: power, popularity, and pleasure. But purpose is, I think, what we're always really looking for. And I do think relationships help, the best relationships grow you into your purpose.
And I feel like there's like the flip side of that coin. They have the potential to help you grow into the best version of yourself. Have you seen, well, and I'm sure you have, right? But the opposite of that, people who are in relationships not becoming their best version.
That's right. And that's why actually I wrote this book, because to me it's those two paths. The belief that someone's going to complete you, that you find the person and then you're going to ride off into the sunset happily ever after, is the type of mindset that degrades you. Those are the type of relationships that leave you degraded, versus the you grow me model, which essentially says we're going to grow each other and become better humans. And looking for a partner who's going to complete you is an entirely different thing than looking for a partner who's going to grow you. And that, to me, is what is critical in this. In the same way, right, we're going back to these misguided unconscious decisions. In the same way, you need to understand that habits and behaviors don't drive change, but identity and beliefs do. Inside of health and fitness, you have to understand it's not just calories, it's hormones, right? Inside finance, you need to know that it's not just earning money, but it's managing money as well and saving money. Well, inside romantic relationships, we need to get the narrative correct, that it's not about finding someone. It's not about completing each other. It's about growing with somebody. And all of these ideas, this is what I mean by the frame in which we humans look at particular problems, and the way that we're trying to transform will define the success. If you go looking for a you complete me type of relationship, you will likely find it, and then you will be degraded as a result of it and wonder why. Well, guess what? It was your beliefs. It was your misguided unconscious decisions about what relationships are meant to be. And this, to me, is a reframing. This is, by the way, these ideas, this is why we call it personal development or personal growth, because they free you from the old cultural narratives to help you be better. And when you do that, not only do you grow yourself, you enrich others, and you actually evolve the world. And to me, this is what we're doing on the planet as humans. We're here for, in my mind, 3 reasons and 3 reasons only: to learn, to teach, and to love. Love being sort of synonymous with create, right? And so we get into relationships to learn, we then teach also, and then we get to create something beautiful with our purpose. And this is the way I think it works. It's the way I think it has always worked, but a lot of our culture level beliefs keep us stuck. And so my passion is really helping people get beyond these unconscious beliefs that are holding them back from true transformation.
I was just thinking of that as you were saying this, like the old culture beliefs that keep you stuck. How do you think this has changed even over the last 100 years?
It's been profound, right? Like if we look, like think about it, 100 years ago, right? We're in a completely different situation, right? We're coming out of, the Civil War is still, on people's minds, right? Like all these things are, slavery was just something that, it has been, that, people are coming out of. No one in their right mind believes any of that stuff anymore, because those ideas were changed through what I would call next level humans, right? There's these people who are always pushing the boundaries, questioning in themselves and through culture, what are the ideas that we should be living by? We need to be doing this within ourselves primarily, but when we do, we inspire other people to do the same. And so 100 years ago, people had particular beliefs. They were doing things a particular way. We can all look back on some of that stuff now and say how wrong-headed it was, how antiquated it was. But how did that happen? It happened from individuals deciding, I will not participate in that. I am going to be better in this way, actually questioning these beliefs, and then other people going and being inspired by that. And by the way, from my perspective, this is what each and every one of us, me, you, everyone who's listening to this conversation right now, to me, I actually believe, and we can all just see, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but I actually believe the whole entire point of us being on the planet is so that we can live our best lives, live our best purpose, and inspire other people to do the same. And in fact, that is our purpose. So Another misguided unconscious decision is the following. I've been through pain. I've been through struggle, and it's just pain and struggle. There's no benefit to it. What I would like to challenge everyone with and is the idea that your pain is your fastest path to purpose. Your struggle is your greatest source of meaning. Your hurt is a way to help. And there's two paths to be able to take, right? We all know the idea of, the person who gets hurt and they blame, complain, they whimper, whine, they distract at night, or at worst, they're the hurt person who hurts people. That's the opposite of purpose. Purpose is essentially saying, I've been hurt. I've had my struggles. All humans do, by the way. I've learned these lessons. I don't want other people to suffer in the same way. And now I'm going to use my hurt to help individuals. And to me, this is why we continue to evolve. It's why we're not living the same lives that we were 100 years ago, to answer your question. It's also what we, I think, have to be aware of in our current day and age and culture, is that the base level tendencies of humans are always trying to pull us backwards. The next level tendencies are always trying to march us forward to evolve. And of course, the culture level, which is the greatest thing, wants to keep us right where we are. And so it's us as individuals who are the ones who live our best lives, grow ourselves, enrich others to evolve the world. And I think that's why we're on the planet.
This is deep. This is deeper than I thought we were going to get today. I feel like there's some of this basic mindset stuff that, unless you have done work with this or looked into this at all, a lot of people aren't having these conversations regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, do they teach this in school or for the average person?
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what, you and I would say, right? And like all of us in this conversation right now, all of you listening, me, you, Beth, like we're humans, right? And so obviously as humans, we don't always get this right. And of course we do want, pleasure, and we do want, to eat the things we want to eat and be the ways that we want to be. It is kind of hard work. However, in the end, I do think what we really want is to matter and make a difference. And what we oftentimes do, instead of understanding that we are unique, for example, Beth, there's never been anyone like you on the face of the planet in the history of humanity, nor will there ever be again. Same with me, same with every single one of your listeners. And to me, once we recognize how uniquely powerful we are, like spiritual fingerprints, like purpose potentials in a sense, we then realize that we can do something for the world in a positive way that no one else can in quite the way that we can. And that this is perhaps why we are here. And this includes our pain and our struggles. Like one of the things I oftentimes say to my patients when they're dealing with really difficult stuff, which all humans will, is to essentially say, and especially in family patterns, generational traumas and family stuff, is that perhaps the whole reason that you got exposed to that particular family and dealt with some of the traumas that you've dealt with, your whole job is to transcend and grow beyond the family patterns, to get unstuck, to be the first of your generation to move beyond those traumas so that you can deal with the next one. Because the game of life is always about the next thing you need to deal with. But it is sad when generation after generation after generation is repeating the same cycles of trauma, these same misguided unconscious decisions. So I would say our job is to break those intergenerational chains. The first job is to break the patterns of our dysfunctional families. And instead of looking at it like, this happened to me, woe is me, which I agree, it is horrible. It is tough. Anyone who has been hurt, as good humans, we should allow them to be victims for a time. In fact, they have to be, because it's part of the healing process. However, I do think we also have to hold all of ourselves to a standard to essentially say, if I want to move beyond, to transcend, to grow, to live my purpose, I will eventually have to get beyond the victim state. Everyone needs to be a victim for a time. No one should stay stuck in victim. And it's getting out of that victim mentality, becoming the hurt person who helps people, that I think frees you from a lot of this stuff. So that's why I think, to your point, that personal development is the most important thing we can do, right? We have, in my mind, we have 4 jobs. Every human has to do 4 jobs. We have to manage our finances, right? We have to manage our health and fitness. We have to give and receive love, personal relationships. And the 4th job is we have to do personal development, purpose and meaning. We have to grow ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why this is critical. And I do think it flows over. If you want to know which one of those jobs will help every other job, it's the personal development job. But for some reason, we have not been very good as humans on doing that work.
It's, it's not easy work.
No, it's not. No.
It's not easy work, but it's very valuable.
Yeah.
And can change a lot. One of the things, and this was part of your bio that was sent to me, that I was like, oh, this is interesting. It says like a PhD in transpersonal psychology and a certificate in psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Is that kind of woven in here with what we're discussing?
It is, so part of the reason I went back to school and, now working on my PhD in psychology and have gotten into the psychedelic world is because from my perspective, when we look at these unconscious beliefs, these stuck belief systems in our unconscious, there are many different tools that you can use to begin to untether yourself from these old beliefs. And just to give everyone a visual, if you've ever seen A Christmas Carol and Scrooge and his old partner, Bob Cratchit, I think was his name, when he comes in the room and he has this chain that he's pulling along, it's like weighing him down. That's what it's like when we have all these old stories. So we can go like, oh, I'm going to go to this meditation retreat and, do some manifestation work and all this stuff. But if we have these chains pulling us backwards, we're not going to get anywhere. So I started going, well, what are the tools that allow me to work with my patients to untether themselves from these narratives that keep them stuck? And there are several. There are things like written exposure therapy. There are things like visualization and void meditation. But one of the more powerful ones over the last couple of years in the research that has really blown my mind is the psychedelics, psilocybin, ketamine, MDMA, all LSD. These things have profound ability to alter our consciousness in a way that allow us to spot and see some of these misguided unconscious decisions, perhaps for the first time ever. They tend to give us a different perspective about who it is that we think we are. They unwind our identity a little bit. They cause us not to want to defend our identity so vigorously. They allow us to actually see, oh, guess what? My mother, who I have a mother wound, let's say, also has a perspective. She struggled, she suffered. It allows us to begin to see things from other people's perspectives and begin to unwind a lot of our struggles and our trials and our tribulations and even our capital T traumas. And so from my perspective, any tool that allows us to do that, which the psychedelics have some utility there, are powerful tools.
When you, just so I can clarify for everyone listening, when you say capital T trauma.
So we tend to think when we hear the word trauma, we tend to think of those things. But from your nervous system's point of view, other things can be trauma that are much less culturally considered traumas. I'll give you an example of this, something very simple from my life. I was the youngest of 4 kids. My mother and father, when we were kids, would just run us all over the place, right? So they would bring us to baseball, to football, to basketball. Like they were just zigzagging all over the place. One day I got left at the baseball field for probably about 2.5 hours, and it was getting dark, and I started to get incredibly scared. And I was young. I was like maybe 6, 7 years old. I just started playing. And we all know as adults what happened, right? My mom got home and said, "Where's Jade?" And my dad was probably like, "Oh my God, I thought you were getting him." And then they were like, "Oh my God." And they jumped in the car and went to get me. Now, logically, as an adult, I can understand that. And everyone listening can understand it. However, my little kid's nervous system, which still exists in me today as an adult male, registered that, and it was traumatic. And it made me have a distrust, along with some other things in my childhood, for my parents to a degree. This simple thing, being teased by my brother. He thought he was teasing me. I thought I was being bullied. This had a traumatic impact in my body. My mother, who loved me dearly, but also was emotionally volatile. And she would, one day I would see her crying in the living room. The next day she would be incredibly happy. So I learned to distrust female emotions. That was a trauma. Now, all of you listening can probably go back and be like, oh, I understand. These things are not just rape and murder and war and these kinds of things. These are what we might just call struggles, difficulties, things that scared us, things that caused us to create these misguided unconscious decisions. And to get a little bit vulnerable with everybody, I'll tell you what happened to me because I had a volatile mother. I learned to distrust female emotions, and I became a people pleaser. Now, what do you think happened in my romantic relationships over the years? This pattern created all kinds of dysfunction. And those romantic relationships did not get fixed until I spotted those misguided unconscious decisions and started to rewrite them. So that's what I mean by trauma. But maybe the better word for most of what we deal with is struggle. We can't compare each other's trauma, but it makes a big difference. All that matters is how our little nervous systems, when we were adolescents, young adults, little kids, how that trauma and that difficulty and that struggle got stored within us. And these are the things that we must rewrite from my perspective and untether ourselves from if we're ever going to transform. These are the things that create our identity and beliefs from which our habits and behaviors flow out of. So all this stuff about health and fitness and relationships and finance and all this stuff is directly related to these stories we created out of our struggles at a time where we did not have the wisdom, the know-how, the knowledge, the skills to deal with it.
Yeah. The phrase, how you do anything is how you do everything comes to mind when you say that.
100%. And I would say the thing that you believe is the thing that follows you around. And here's the thing. And then if you do not know that you believe it, then you wonder. And this brings me to another point. When you're doing personal development, remember we talked about how to know if your metabolism is under stress, hunger, energy, and cravings, heck in check. Well, you can know that your spirit and is out of alignment with purpose if you have repeated patterns, recurrent struggles. They happen again and again. We all know what this is like, right? A better job, more money, same amount in your bank account. New romantic partner, same pattern. Like that person looks different, but you're going through the same patterns with them. This is why people who win the lottery go back to being poor. This is why people repeat patterns inside of romantic relationships. This is why people fail with diets again and again and again. So when you see these repeated patterns and recurrent obstacles, what you should be looking at is like, what is the belief system that I have hidden in me that is causing this? And another one that's really important is stuck emotions, especially being stuck in the emotions of afraid. Think about afraid as an acronym. Anger, frustration, resistance, anxiety, insecurity, and depression. Whenever you get stuck in any of those emotions, remember from emotions as humans, we should feel all emotions, but we should not get stuck in an emotion. Whenever we're stuck in one of these emotions, it's another indication that we have some of these dysfunctional, misguided, unconscious decisions we created that we're unaware of. And by the way, you're starting to break them when repeated patterns, recurrent obstacles, and stuck emotions give way to synchronicities and serendipities and opportunities, right? Like those are the ways that we know that we're on our personal development path. Because what will happen is all of a sudden you do get the new opportunity that looks different and you take it and everything shows up different. Or you get the new romantic partner that's completely different, not your type, not who you normally go for, but everything shows up different. Or the right person shows up at the right time. And this is what begins to happen as we untether ourselves from these old beliefs.
And so with the psychedelic piece of this, and you said this is a way to like unwind all that stuff. Have you seen a lot? Because I feel like this is a newer frontier for a lot of people to kind of dive into using it as a tool. I want to say to kind of do some of this work.
Yeah.
What have you seen or experienced with this?
I would offer a little bit of caution. It's incredibly powerful, but I'll tell you how to make it more powerful. It's a little bit, you want to exercise some caution because we all know what this is like, right? Any of you who know people, they do psychedelic journey after psychedelic journey after psychedelic journey. It becomes like another thing that they're chasing, right? Yeah. This means that they're not actually getting to the cause of this. And so it's not about the journey per se, it's about the integration that happens after the journey. So what I would like to see, and where I think we go sideways with this, is we think it's just about the actual psychedelics, that they do all the work. No, they don't. What they do is they open you up to begin to do the work. And so what happens is, with what we call integration, right? This idea of like, I spotted the story, but this is very much like talk therapy, and where talk therapy goes sideways, right? Because talk therapy, you can be like, oh, you've got a mother wound. And then you just talk about it, and it never actually changes. Or, oh, you've got a father wound. And you just talk about it. That's very similar to what I think goes on with a lot of people with psychedelics. The reason people say one psychedelic session is like 5 years of therapy, because it helps you spot the story quickly. But spotting the story is only the first step. The next step is beginning to integrate that story and rewrite it. And let me talk about integrating it, right? This idea of, let's say for me, I became a people pleaser, a liar, a cheater in my romantic relationships. Then I spotted that story. Now the work begins. So now what I had to do is go, okay, here's who I have been. There must be some use here. There's a lesson here. What is the lesson that I need to learn? Well, my lesson was around honesty and authenticity. Now, some of you would look at me and go, you know what, Jade, that's interesting, because honesty was never an issue for me. I was always honest. It was always easy for me. My issue was something else. Like I wasn't kind, or I needed to work on generosity or trust. We all have our thing. But mine was honesty and authenticity. And so once I spotted the story, then I had to go, all right, now it's time for me to begin understanding what honesty actually is. Now, for some of you who never had an issue with honesty, you're thinking to yourself, what's he talking about? He doesn't know what honesty is. But in my story, I did not. And so I had to go in and actually learn what honesty was about. And what I eventually came to over years and years is that honesty for me is simply never manipulating someone else's reality, right? I just simply commit that I will never manipulate your reality, because I had done that. It had been part of who I was, but I learned that partly was me spotting it, partly through psychedelic work. It helped me with this, but also through written exposure therapies and different tools to see that was my issue and how to rewrite it. Now think about what yours is, right? It could be, I don't take care of my body. I tend to eat junk food. What is that about? What's the story behind that? I don't trust. I don't let anyone take care of me. I don't ask for help, or, way too needy, or I always struggle with finances, or whatever it is. Rest assured that repeated pattern, that recurrent struggle has a story behind it. You need to find that story and spot it. And then you need to begin to integrate it in a way that works for you. So what I did is I essentially go, oh, now I know why I was dishonest. So I could understand what dishonesty was. So I could find honesty. So I could begin teaching on it. I became the hurt person who helped somebody. So this is what a lot of my books are about. The You Grow Me book that you mentioned really is a story about the philosophy of authenticity and honesty inside of romantic relationships, because that was my struggle.
Yes, I love this. And then from that, I also want to mention that you have an event coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I do. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so This is an event called the Experience Event. And if you all are listening to this and vibing with this and are like, oh my gosh, I really love this work and I need this work and I feel like it's something that I could benefit from, this event actually introduces you to this 3-step process of change, especially the first part of the process, which is spotting and untethering ourselves from those old stories. Of course, the middle part is really now beginning to get your nervous system to memorize a new feeling in your body, which is the next thing to know. And then the third phase is really about the idea of be it until you see it. And I'll just briefly explain that. But most people think of it in terms of fake it till you make it. It's not how you want to think about it, because that's pretending, right? Faking means when people are watching, you're doing the thing. And when they're not watching, you're not doing the thing. Be it means alignment in thoughts, feelings, choices, and actions. And if you want a shortcut, think of a method actor. When they get the part, it doesn't matter if the director says action or the director says cut. They just keep playing the part. So a shortcut to this is then you have to take the actions in the real world. And so the experience event basically takes people through this 3-step process. Untether the old story so you can think different. Memorize the new feeling in your nervous system so you can begin to be different, and then act. Choose and act in alignment with that. And before you know it, your identity has been restructured. You are a different human being. And that's how the experience event works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I am really loving about what you're saying is, for a lot of people that go to events when they're so excited about something and I'm going to do this and this is going to change me and all this stuff. And then they go right back home into their old environment and they don't really have a change, right?
100%. That's exactly right. They haven't integrated it appropriately.
Yes.
And this is very similar to doing a psychedelic journey and then nothing changing, going to a self-development seminar, nothing changing.
Yeah.
Going, and this is, you and I, given our fields, we see this all the time, right? That it's not information that it transforms people. It's identity change. Information is not transformation. Habits and behaviors are not transformation. Identity change is transformation.
Yes. Identity change is transformation. I love that. That's phenomenal. So we're going to put all the links, in the show notes for people to get your latest book. And then, of course, once they find you and follow you on the socials, on the interwebs, they can, list your other books. But we're also going to put information for that event for people who really are looking for all of those steps and to really have that full transformation, which is an incredible thing to offer people. So that's exciting.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And thank you for I felt like I talked a mile a minute and rambled like crazy, but I appreciate
we covered a lot of topics. Yeah, and I love that though.
I appreciate you putting up with me and allowing me to hang out with you for sure. I appreciate your work so much. And thank you to all your listeners as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being here. And well, we might have to do like a part 2 to this because I feel like we lightly touched on a lot of different things. And so if you guys are listening and you want a part 2, just let me know. And
we covered a lot of ground. That's I think I covered more ground on this podcast than any podcast I've ever done. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, we will chat with you later. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.